need to tell you about something that happened to me about 8 months ago. I've gone back and forth about whether to share this, because honestly, part of me still doesn't fully understand what happened. But I think people need to hear it, especially anyone who drives rideshare late at night. At the time, I was pulling Uber shifts on weekends to cover rent. Friday and Saturday nights were the money shifts. The drunk crowd, the club crowd, the after-party crowd. You learn to deal with a lot. People getting sick in your back seat, couples screaming at each other, guys who think they're comedians at 1 a.m. That stuff becomes background noise after a while. But that Saturday was different. It was around 2 in the morning. I'd already done maybe 9 or 10 rides that night, and I was thinking about calling it. My eyes were getting heavy, and the streets were starting to thin out. I was parked near a gas station off the main strip, finishing a coffee when a new ride request popped up. The pickup was only 3 minutes away. A name, I'll just say it was Daniel, and a destination about 25 minutes east, toward a more rural stretch outside the city. The fare looked decent, so I accepted. I pulled up to the pickup location. It was a residential street. Quiet, no porch lights on, no one standing outside. I waited about a minute, then 2. I was just about to tap "Rider not here" when the rear passenger door opened. A man slid in. He looked maybe mid-30s, clean cut, wearing a dark jacket. Nothing unusual. He didn't say hello, didn't confirm his name. He just sat down and pulled the door shut. I glanced in the rear view. "Daniel?" I asked. He paused for just a beat too long. Then he nodded slowly. Something about the way he did it. Not a casual nod. More like he was deciding to agree. Made a small knot form in my stomach. But I brushed it off. People are weird at 2 in the morning. I started driving. For the first 5 minutes, nothing happened. He sat in the back, quiet, staring out the window. I had low music playing. The streets were mostly empty. Everything felt normal enough. Then he spoke. "Can you turn that off?" His voice was flat. Not rude, not polite, just flat, like someone reading words off a wall. I turned the music off, and that's when the silence became heavy. You know that kind of silence that feels like pressure, like the air in the car just changed? I kept driving. A few minutes later, I glanced in the mirror again. He wasn't looking out the window anymore. He was looking directly at me. Not at the back of my head, at my eyes. In the mirror, when our gazes met, he didn't look away. He didn't blink. He just held it. I looked back at the road. My hands tightened on the wheel. "Everything okay?" I asked, trying to keep my voice casual. No answer. I gave it another 30 seconds. Then I looked in the mirror again. He was closer. Not dramatically. He hadn't lunged forward or anything, but he had shifted to the middle seat. He was sitting directly behind me now, and he was still staring. My heart started going. Not full panic, but that low electric hum your body gives you when it knows something is wrong, before your brain catches up. The GPS had me turning off the main road soon, onto a 2-lane road that cut through a patch of nothing. No street lights, no houses, just fields and tree lines. I did not want to make that turn. "Hey man," I said, trying to sound firm. "The app says we're heading out past Miller Road. That right?" Silence. Then, very quietly, "Just keep driving." That's when I noticed his hands. They were resting on his knees, and in the pale glow of a passing streetlight, I could see they were trembling, not from fear. It was like he was holding something back, like his whole body was vibrating with some kind of restrained energy. I made a decision. I wasn't making that turn. I drove straight past the exit the GPS wanted me to take. The app started recalculating. He noticed immediately. "You missed the turn," he said. His voice had changed. It was tighter now, controlled, but barely. "Roads closed up ahead." I lied. "Taking a detour." I started steering us back toward the main strip, toward lights, toward people, toward the gas station, where I knew there were cameras and at least one attendant working overnight. He didn't say anything for about a minute, the longest minute of my life. Then he leaned forward, close enough that I could hear him breathing, close enough that I felt the warmth of it on my neck. "Stop the car," he whispered. I didn't stop. I kept driving. My hand moved to my phone in the cup holder. I was ready to call 901. And then he just opened the door. We were going maybe 30 miles an hour. He pushed the door open, and the car filled with rushing wind and the sound of pavement. I hit the brakes instinctively, and before the car fully stopped, he stepped out, not jumped, not stumbled. He stepped out like he was exiting a parked vehicle, calm and deliberate. I watched him in the side mirror. He stood on the shoulder of the road, perfectly still, watching my car. I didn't wait. I hit the gas, and I drove until I reached the gas station parking lot, where I sat with my doors locked and my hands shaking for 15 minutes. I reported the ride through the app. I described what happened. I got a generic response. But here's the part that still keeps me up at night when I check the ride details later, the destination address he had entered. I looked it up. It wasn't a house. It wasn't a business. It was an empty lot at the end of a dead-end dirt road, bordering about 200 acres of woods, and the name on the account, Daniel, that account, was deleted before morning. I don't drive past midnight anymore, and I never took another ride heading east. Some passengers you're not meant to pick up, and some rides were never meant to have a destination. I worked at a gas station for almost 2 years. Not one of those big, well-lit travel centers off the interstate. I'm talking about a small, older station on a county road about 15 minutes outside of town. The kind of place with fluorescent lights that buzzed too loud and a parking lot that felt like the edge of the world. After midnight, most of the time, the night shift was boring. Beautifully, painfully boring. You'd get a handful of customers between 10 and midnight, people grabbing cigarettes, maybe a trucker filling up, and then after that, nothing. Just you, the hum of the coolers, and the occasional car passing on the road, without stopping. I didn't mind it. I liked the quiet. I'd bring a book, sometimes watch videos on my phone. My manager didn't care, as long as the register balanced and the place was clean by 6. But there was one night, a Wednesday in November, that I will never be able to explain. And believe me, I have tried. It started around 2:45 a.m. I was sitting behind the counter, half reading something on my phone, when the front door chimed. I looked up, and a man walked in. He was average height, maybe early 40s. He wore a beige jacket, the kind with a corduroy collar, and dark pants. His hair was short, a little messy. He looked completely normal. That's the thing I keep coming back to. There was absolutely nothing remarkable about him. He walked in, gave me a small nod, and went down the second aisle. I watched him for a moment. Out of habit, you keep a lazy eye on people during the night shift, just in case. And then went back to my phone. A minute or two later, he came up to the counter with a bottle of water. He paid in cash, exact change, didn't say a word. I said, "Have a good one," and he gave me that same small nod. Then he walked out. Normal. Completely normal. About 20 minutes later, the door chimed again. I looked up, and he walked in. Same man, same beige jacket, same corduroy collar, same short, messy hair. He gave me the same small nod. I almost said something like, "Back again?" But something stopped me. I don't know what. Some instinct, some quiet little voice in the back of my skull that said, "Just watch." He went down the second aisle. Same aisle. He came back up with a bottle of water. Same brand. He paid in cash. Exact change. He didn't speak. I said, "Have a good one." He nodded and left. I stood there behind the counter, for a moment feeling a strange prickle at the back of my neck. I told myself, it was nothing. People forget things. People come back. Maybe he was on a long drive and wanted another water. It was odd, sure, but not scary. Then, at almost exactly 3:30 a.m., the door chimed again, and he walked in. Same jacket, same nod, same slow, unhurried pace down the second aisle. This time, my mouth went dry. I watched him the entire time. I didn't look at my phone. I didn't blink more than I had to. I watched him walk down that aisle, pick up a bottle of water, same brand, same size, and bring it to the counter. He placed it down. He put the exact change on the counter, coins and all, the same amount, laid out in the same order. I looked at his face. He looked back at me, and I realized something that made the hair on my arms stand straight up. His expression hadn't changed. Not once. Not across any of the 3 visits. It was the same face, same flat, neutral, pleasant expression. Not robotic, exactly. Just perfectly consistent. Like a photograph of an expression someone had chosen to wear. "Have a good one," I said, and my voice cracked slightly. He nodded and walked out. I stood there, heart beating harder than it should have been. I pulled out my phone and texted my buddy Marcus, who sometimes worked the day shift. I told him something weird was going on. He didn't respond. It was almost 4 in the morning. Of course he didn't. I decided to check the security cameras. We had a basic system, 4 cameras recording to a hard drive in the back office. 1 pointed at the front door, 1 at the register, 2 covering the aisles. The footage wasn't great quality, but it was clear enough. I rewound to 2:45 a.m., the time of the first visit. I watched the front door camera. At 2:46, the door opened, and nobody came in. The door swung open, stayed open for a few seconds, and then slowly closed. No person, no shadow, nothing. I switched to the aisle camera. The second aisle, the one I watched him walk down 3 times, was empty. Completely empty. But I could see, on the shelf, a bottle of water, slide forward, and then fall as if someone had pulled it from behind. I switched to the register camera. This one faced me. It showed the counter from the front. I was standing there, looking at something, just to the left of the camera's view. My lips moved. I was speaking to someone. I reached out and took something, money, presumably, from the counter. But there was nothing there. No hand offering it. No figure standing across from me. I felt the air go out of my lungs. I checked the second visit. Same thing. The door opens on its own. The aisle is empty. A bottle slides off the shelf, and I'm at the counter, talking and making change for no one. Third visit, identical. I closed the footage. My hands were shaking so hard, I could barely navigate the mouse. I went back to the counter. I looked at the register. I opened the drawer. The money was there. The exact change from all 3 transactions was sitting in the register. Real coins. Real bills. I touched them. They were cold, but they were real. I looked at the counter, and the 3 bottles of water were gone. I checked the trash, thinking maybe I'd thrown the bag. Nothing. I checked the aisle. The shelf where that brand of water was stocked, full. Every slot. Not a single bottle missing. I locked the front door. I know I wasn't supposed to. We were a 24-hour station. But I locked it. I sat behind the counter, with every light on, and I did not move until my morning replacement showed up. At 6, I told my manager what happened. He checked the cameras himself. He watched the footage, all 3 visits, in silence. When he was done, he closed the window and looked at me. The cameras glitch sometimes, he said, but he didn't look at me when he said it. And he didn't ask me to work the night shift again. I quit. 2 weeks later. Here's what I keep thinking about, though, the thing that won't let me sleep. Some nights. During that 3rd visit, when I was watching him so carefully, studying his face, while he stood at the counter, I was looking right at him. I could describe every detail. The collar of his jacket, the stubble on his chin, the exact way he placed each coin on the counter. But according to every single camera in that building, there was no one there. So what was I looking at? And more importantly, was it looking back? I travel a lot for work, consulting, the kind where they fly you to some mid-sized city for 3 days to sit in conference rooms and tell people things they already know. It's not glamorous. It's lonely, mostly hotel after hotel, rental car after rental car. At some point, I started booking Airbnbs instead, because at least they felt like real places. A kitchen, a couch, a window that looked out onto something other than a parking garage. I want you to keep that in mind. I'd stayed in dozens of these places, apartments, guest houses, basement suites, converted attics. I was comfortable with the whole arrangement. I knew the routine, lockbox code, Wi-Fi password checkout instructions on the fridge. I was not the kind of person who got spooked easily. That changed in October of last year. The job was in a small town in upstate New York. Not rural exactly, but not a place. With a lot of options, there were 2 hotels, both booked, because of some regional conference. So I found an Airbnb A full house, actually. A two-story colonial, about 10 minutes from the town center, set back from the road, on about half an acre. It looked charming in the photos. White siding, black shutters, a wraparound porch. The listing said the owner lived out of state and used the property as a rental. It had dozens of reviews, all positive, all normal. I arrived on a Tuesday evening, around 8. The lockbox was on the side door. I punched in the code, grabbed the key, and let myself in. The house was clean. It smelled, faintly, like lemon cleaning solution, and cedar, hardwood floors, older furniture, the kind that looks like it came with the house. A staircase near the front door led up to 3 bedrooms. I chose the one at the end of the hall because it had the biggest bed and a bathroom attached. I unpacked, made some pasta. In the kitchen, answered a few emails. By 11, I was in bed, with the lights off. The house was dead quiet, not even the ticking of a clock. I remember thinking how still it was. No traffic noise, no neighbors, just the occasional creak of the house. Settling. I fell asleep. Fast. I woke up at 2:17 a.m. I know the exact time because I looked at my phone. Immediately, something had pulled me out of sleep. Not a dream, not a need to use the bathroom. A sound. I lay there, perfectly still, and listened. Footsteps. They were coming. From downstairs. Slow, deliberate footsteps. On hardwood. Not the random popping of an old house. These had rhythm, weight, direction. Someone was walking through the first floor. My chest tightened. I held my breath and listened harder. The footsteps moved from what sounded like the kitchen toward the front of the house. Then they stopped. Silence. A full minute of silence. Then I heard a door close. Softly, not slammed, pulled shut with care, the way you close a door when you're trying not to wake someone. I sat up in bed. My mind raced through explanations. The host had mentioned nothing about anyone else having access. The listing clearly said the entire house was mine. There were no shared spaces, no cleaning crew scheduled, nothing. I grabbed my phone and opened the Airbnb app. I sent the host a message. Hey, just want to confirm. Is anyone else supposed to be in the house tonight? I'm hearing noises downstairs. Then I waited. It was after 2 in the morning, so I didn't expect an immediate reply. I sat on the edge of the bed, staring at the closed bedroom door, straining to hear anything. For about 15 minutes, nothing. The house was silent again. I started to relax. Old house, strange acoustics. Maybe a raccoon on the porch. Maybe the plumbing. I was rationalizing, and I was doing a decent job of it. Then the footsteps started again. This time they were on the stairs, slow, one step at a time. The kind of creak that each step of an old staircase makes when someone puts their full weight on it. One, then another, ascending. I stopped breathing. I stared at the bedroom door. I had not locked it. There was no lock on it. Actually, just an old brass knob. The footsteps reached the top of the stairs. I could feel it, that shift in proximity. When someone enters the same floor, you're on. The air changes. The silence. gets tighter. Then, footsteps in the hallway, moving slowly, passing the first bedroom door. Then, the second. They stopped right outside. Mine. I was standing now. I don't remember getting up. My phone was in my hand. Flashlight ready, but not on. Every muscle in my body was locked. I watched the doorknob. It didn't turn, but I heard breathing. Low, measured breathing on the other side of the door. Not panting, not gasping, just the steady rhythm of someone standing still and breathing through their nose. It lasted maybe 30 seconds. It felt like a year. Then the footsteps retreated, back down the hall, back down the stairs, slow and even, same pace as before. I heard the soft click of the side door, the one I'd entered through, opening and closing. I did not sleep. I pushed a dresser in front of the bedroom door, sat on the bed with every light on, and waited until the sun came up. At 6:44 a.m., the host replied to my message. "Hi, no, the house should be completely empty. Just you. The neighbor's dog sometimes gets loose and scratches at the porch. Could that be it? Let me know if there's anything else." I left within the hour. I didn't shower. I didn't make coffee. I packed my bag, wiped down what I'd used, and locked the door behind me. I left the key in the lockbox and drove to a hotel 40 minutes away. But here's the part that I haven't been able to shake. When I was packing up that morning, moving the dresser away from the bedroom door, I noticed something I hadn't seen the night before. On the back of the door, the side that faced into the room, there were scratches near the bottom. Not decorative, not from a pet. They were long, deliberate marks in the wood, grouped in sets of 5, tally marks. I counted them twice. There were 17. I looked at the listing again later that week. The reviews, all those positive reviews I'd skimmed before booking. I went back and read them carefully. Most were fine. Normal. Great place. Very clean. Would recommend. But 3 of them, spread across different months, had the same odd detail. Buried in otherwise cheerful write-ups. Beautiful home. Only suggestion would be to fix the lock on the upstairs bedroom door. There was no lock. There had never been a lock. I think those guests knew that. And I think whatever walked up those stairs at 2 a.m. knew it too. Security work sounds exciting until you actually do it. Then you realize it's 99% boredom and 1% of your heart trying to punch through your rib cage. I did overnight security for a property management company for about a year and a half. They rotated me between different buildings. But the one I worked most often was a 7-story office building on the east side of the city. Corporate tenants, accounting firms, a marketing agency, a staffing company, the kind of building that buzzes all day and goes completely dead by 7 p.m. My shift was 10 at night to 6 in the morning. The routine was simple. I'd check in at the front desk in the lobby, review the access log from the day shift, then do rounds every 2 hours, walk every floor, check stairwell doors, make sure nothing was out of place. Between rounds, I sat at the desk and watched the camera feeds on a bank of old monitors. 16 cameras, mostly hallways and exits. The footage was grainy, black and white, the kind that made everything look vaguely unsettling, even when nothing was happening. For the first 3 months, absolutely nothing happened, not a single incident. The most exciting thing was a pipe bursting on the second floor one night, and even that was just me calling the emergency maintenance line and waiting. Then I started noticing the light. It was on the 4th floor, Suite 410, a mid-sized office leased by some kind of financial consulting firm. During the day, it was a normal office, desks, computers, a small kitchen area, a conference room with glass walls. At night, like everything else, it was dark, except one night during my 2:30 a.m. round, it wasn't. I stepped off the elevator onto the 4th floor and immediately saw it, a warm glow spilling out from under the door of Suite 410 bleeding across the hallway carpet. I stopped. I checked my watch. 2:34 a.m. Nobody was supposed to be here. The access log showed no after-hours entries. The building had key-card accesses on every exterior door, and the system logged every single swipe. Nothing. I walked up to the door and listened. No voices, no typing, no movement. Just the low electrical hum of a light being on. I tried the handle. Locked. I had a master key, but protocol was to call it in first. So I radioed the monitoring center. They confirmed no authorized after-hours access for that suite. They told me to do a visual check and report back. I unlocked the door and pushed it open. The office was empty. Every chair tucked in, every desk clean, the overhead lights were off. But in the back corner, in a small private office that belonged to whoever ran the place, the desk lamp was on. A single warm bulb glowing amber, illuminating an empty leather chair. And a bare desk. I turned it off. Checked the windows, all locked. Checked the conference room, the kitchen, the supply closet. Nothing. Nobody. I locked the suite behind me, finished my round, and noted it in the log. I figured someone had left the lamp on after work, and it had just taken me a few nights to notice. But the next night it was on again. Same time, same lamp, same empty chair. I turned it off again, made a note, moved on. The third night, I decided to be more deliberate about it. During my 12:30 a.m. round, I specifically went to Suite 410 and checked. The lamp was off. The office was dark. Everything normal. I locked up and went back to the lobby. At 2:30, I went back up. The lamp was on. Something cold settled in my stomach. I stood in the hallway for a long moment, staring at the light, bleeding under the door, and I felt, for the first time, in that building, genuinely uneasy, not because a lamp was on. Lamps turn on, wiring shorts, timers malfunction, bulbs do strange things. What bothered me was the precision, the consistency, every single night, in that same narrow window of time. I went in, turned it off, and this time I unplugged it. I pulled the cord from the wall, coiled it on the desk, and left. The next night, 2:30 a.m., 4th floor. Light under the door. I unlocked the suite, walked to the back office. The lamp was on, plugged in. The cord I had coiled on the desk was back in the wall outlet, stretched to its full length, as if it had never been touched. My hands were shaking, not dramatically, just a fine tremor, the kind you don't notice until you try to hold something still. I turned the lamp off. I stood in that small office and I listened to the building. The ventilation system whispered through the ducts. The elevator shaft made a faint settling sound somewhere below me. Everything else was silent. I looked at the desk. It was completely bare, except for the lamp. No papers, no computer, no personal items. But under the light, just before I turned it off, I thought I'd seen something on the surface. I pulled out my flashlight and angled it low across the desktop. There were marks, faint, circular marks in the wood, finished like someone had been pressing their fingertips against the surface. Hard, over and over. 5 small impressions, spaced exactly, like a right hand, resting on a desk. I left the office. I locked the suite. I went downstairs and I sat at the lobby desk. And I did not do another round. That night, the next morning, I told my supervisor. He was the kind of guy who'd been doing this work for 20 years and didn't blink at anything. He said he'd look into it. 2 days later, he told me the tenant in suite 410 had been contacted and they'd confirmed no one was working after hours. They said they'd have their office manager check the lamp's wiring. Case closed, supposedly, but I pulled the building records myself. I was curious. I wanted to know more about Suite 410. The financial consulting firm had leased it for about 3 years. Before that, it was occupied by a small insurance brokerage. Before that, it sat empty. For 14 months, it sat empty because the previous tenant, a sole proprietor, a man who ran a one-person accounting practice out of that back office, had died in the building, in that suite, in that room. He'd had a cardiac event late one evening while working alone. They found him the next morning, slumped forward in his chair, desk lamp still on. The estimated time of death, according to the incident report filed with the property management company, was between 2 and 3 a.m. I requested a transfer to a different building. The next week, my supervisor approved it without asking a single question. He didn't even look up from his desk. I never went back to that building. But about 4 months later, I ran into the guard who'd replaced me on that assignment. We were at a company training session. During a break, I asked him casually how the building was treating him. He said it was fine, easy gig, nothing ever happened. Then he paused. He looked at me like he was trying to decide whether to say something. "One weird thing, though," he said. He kind of laughed when he said it, but his eyes didn't match. "There's this one office on the 4th floor. The lamp keeps turning itself on in the middle of the night." He waited for me to react. "Does it bother you?" I asked. He took a second too long to answer. "I don't go up to the 4th floor anymore. After midnight," he said. Then he changed the subject and never brought it up again. Some lights aren't asking to be turned off. Some lights are telling you someone is still there, still sitting at that desk, still working late, still pressing their fingers into the wood, still waiting for someone to walk in and find them. I've lived alone for about 4 years now. A small ranch-style house at the end of a cul-de-sac in a quiet suburb outside of Charlotte. 3 bedrooms, 1 bathroom, a carport instead of a garage. The neighborhood is mostly older couples and young families, the kind of street where people wave but don't linger, where nothing happens, and that's exactly the point. I bought the house because it was cheap and because I liked the privacy. The cul-de-sac meant almost no through traffic. My nearest neighbor was about 50 yards away, separated by a row of overgrown crepe myrtles. At night, especially in winter, the street felt like it existed in its own little pocket of silence. I loved that. At least, I used to. This happened last January, a Tuesday night or Wednesday morning. Technically, I'd gone to bed around 11, which was normal for me. I'm a light sleeper. Always have been. The smallest sound pulls me out. A branch tapping a window, the ice maker cycling, a car door 2 houses down. I've learned to live with it. That night, I woke up to knocking. Not tapping, not scratching, knocking. 3 firm mews, evenly spaced knocks. On my front door, the kind of knock a person makes when they want to be heard. Deliberate, patient. I grabbed my phone off the nightstand. The screen burned my eyes. 3:07 a.m. I lay there for a moment, completely still, listening. My bedroom is at the back of the house, maybe 30 feet from the front door. In the silence of that hour, 30 feet is nothing. I could hear the sound clearly, like whoever was standing there was knocking on a door right next to my bed. Then it came again. 3 knocks, same rhythm, same weight, unhurried. My first thought was a neighbor, maybe an emergency, a fire, a gas leak, something that would justify waking someone at 3 in the morning. I got up, pulled on a shirt, and walked down the hallway toward the front of the house. Now I'd installed a Ring doorbell camera about a year before this, not because of any security concern, just because they were on sale and it seemed like a reasonable thing to have. I opened the app on my phone before I got to the door. The live feed loaded. The porch was empty. The motion-activated porch light was on, which meant something had triggered it recently. But the camera showed nothing. Just my front steps, the welcome mat, the railing, and beyond that, the dark, empty street. No person, no car, no animal. I stood in the hallway, staring at the screen, and waited. 30 seconds. A minute. Nothing moved. I started to talk myself down. Maybe it was a kid. Maybe someone knocked on the wrong house and left. Maybe I'd dreamed the first set of knocks, and the second set was just the house settling in the cold. January nights. Got down into the 20s. Wood contracts. Things pop and crack. I turned to go back to bed. 3 knocks, right behind me, right on the other side of the front door. So close and so loud that I felt the vibration in the floor through my bare feet. I spun around. My heart was hammering. I looked at my phone. The camera feed was still live. The porch was still empty. The light was on. Nobody was there. But I had heard it. I had felt it. Someone had just struck my front door 3 times from less than 2 inches of wood away from where I was standing. I didn't open the door. Something deep and primal in my brain, something older and smarter than logic, told me not to touch that door. Don't unlock it. Don't even put your hand on the knob. I backed down the hallway, slowly. I went to the kitchen and turned on every light. I checked the back door. Locked, dead-bolted, chain-latched. I checked the windows in the living room, all closed, all locked. I pulled the blinds aside on the kitchen window, which gave me a partial view of the front yard. From an angle, nothing. The street was empty. The porch light was still on. The crepe myrtles swayed slightly in a breeze. I couldn't hear. I sat down at the kitchen table with my phone in my hand, camera app still open, and I waited. For 19 minutes, nothing happened. I started to feel foolish. My pulse gradually came down. The house was warm and bright, with every light blazing. Whatever it was, it had stopped. 3:26 a.m. I watched the timestamp on my phone tick over. 3 knocks. This time, they didn't come from the front door. They came from the hallway, from deeper inside the house. 3 knocks, same rhythm, same weight, on what sounded like the bathroom door. The bathroom that sat in the middle of the hallway, between the kitchen and my bedroom. I stopped breathing. I was in the kitchen. The hallway stretched in front of me, half lit by the light spilling from where I sat. The bathroom door was closed. I always kept it closed out of habit. I stared at it from 20 feet away. The house was completely silent. The refrigerator hummed. The clock on the microwave blinked. I opened the Ring app again. I scrolled to the motion history. I wanted to see the footage. I wanted to see whatever had triggered the porch light, whatever had been on my porch when the knocking started. The app showed 3 motion-triggered recordings. All 3 were time-stamped. 3:07 a.m., 3:09 a.m., right when the knocking began. I opened the first clip. It was 6 seconds long. The porch light activates. The camera adjusts to the brightness. The porch is empty, but the door, my front door, in the video, was open. Wide open. The camera was mounted above it, angled outward, so you could only see the edge of the door and the darkness of the foyer beyond. My front door was open in the video at 3:07 a.m. While I was asleep in my bed, I opened the second clip. Same thing. Door open, porch empty, 6 seconds of nothing. Third clip. The door was closed. I sat at my kitchen table and I stared at those clips. For a long time, I played them over and over. In the first 2 clips, my front door is clearly open. In the third, it's shut. No one is visible in any frame. No shadow, no figure, no movement, except the porch light clicking on. I did not go down that hallway for the rest of the night. I sat in the kitchen until the sun came up, around 7:15. When the daylight finally filled the house and the street outside came back to life, a car backing out of a driveway, a dog barking somewhere, I stood up and walked slowly to the bathroom door. I opened it. The bathroom was empty. Everything was exactly where it should be. Towel on the hook, shower curtain pulled to one side, nothing out of place, except the mirror on the surface of the bathroom mirror and the fog of faint condensation, the kind that forms when there's a temperature difference between the glass and the air. There were 3 marks, 3 circles pressed into the condensation as if someone had placed 3 fingertips against the glass and held them there. They were on the wrong side, not on the surface, facing me, on the inside, on the side of the mirror that faces the wall. I moved out of that house 6 weeks later, sold it at a loss. The new owners have never mentioned anything unusual, and I've never asked. I don't want to know, but I still wake up sometimes, right around 3. I lie in my new apartment, in my new bed, and I listen. And for just a moment in that thin silence, before the world fills back in with noise, I think I hear it. 3 knocks. Patient, unhurried, and a little bit closer than before.